Costa Mesa, Alice. How are you?
What does that mean?
Yeah. It was one of those towns when I lived in Southern California for a stretch after high school.
Oh.
Absolutely. Costa Mesa, Alice. So it's just the thing here. I want you to listen to this audio and tell me what it is.
Well, creepy old Burger King, this is about the last time I will see you. I want to know what it looks like back there.
That is video of a woman checking out a hidden, closed-off Burger King. Vintage Burger King, and it's got old stuff from 30 years ago or whatever, or it's very dated. Vintage Burger King restaurant found fully intact behind a wall at a mall in Delaware. Now, this is a fast food blast from the past. This is from Yahoo, so who knows who wrote it. A post went viral on Tuesday after a Twitter user shared a photo that reportedly shows a fully intact vintage Burger King behind a wall at a mall in Delaware. Twitter user Real Jezzy Belly wrote that the photo was taken by Jonathan Pruitt in April of 2022 in the Concord Mall.
Can I just add a quick editor's note here, which is that I love when news articles have to cite a Twitter user's handle, like just as is, because they have no idea who the person is.
Right.
Twitter user Jezzy Belly, whatever, 3275 says, like they're like quoting somebody that you should know. It just always cracks me up. I'm still not over it.
It's kind of a creepy picture, but yes. So the vintage look is, they found it. It's behind a closed-off wall in a mall. And I love this stuff because I love ruins of old places and places that are closed down. And this one's preserved.
Huh.
Of course it's creepy because, the lights are half on, half off, and the chairs are all there. And it's just interesting. And dang, I just dig that kind of stuff. I'm trying to think, like, how many times have I seen stuff like this? I think have we seen stuff like this?
Maybe when we visited the racetrack place.
The racetrack, yeah, along the Charles River on, was that near Morrissey Boulevard? Is that what that is? No, it wasn't Morrissey. That's in Dorchester.
It's near like Soldiers Field Road.
Yeah, Soldiers Field Road. There's that was an old racetrack with carriage races. And we went into the field house and saw stuff that had been there like 100 years ago.
Yeah, we still have the Coke can, right?
Yeah.
That we found there that was like from the 70s or something?
From the 1970s, exactly. But the Commandant's house, that's what it was still there, and it was totally preserved. It's owned by the state of Massachusetts. We just snuck in. And like there's old road signs, etc. in there. It's total waste. I mean, the thing is beautiful, but it was awesome.
It's so weird when stuff like that happens, when things just end up in the junk heap that are all this, this. It was people's lives, it was like real stuff that was happening. Like, think how many designers and marketers and all this stuff went into making that Coke can that's now just sitting in an abandoned building that's going to be torn down.
Which
it's like
probably
funny.
Hadn't been touched since 1967.
Right. It's crazy.
When the world was very, very different. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Was there somewhere else that we had talked about where there was the remnants of a place? There must have. I thought when I saw.
Well, what was kind of like that, but was different was when because we for a while had an obsession with going to open houses for houses we had zero intention of actually buying, and we managed to convince this person to let us see their house that they were trying to sell in Winchester. That was like this gorgeous old house that had been done like in the 60s, you think, but it had
Custom
like crazy
built
shag carpet and all this like Mad Men era like ovens and appliances, and it was amazing. We had absolutely no capability financially to buy the house whatsoever. We totally I feel bad. I feel like we tricked the guy into getting to wander through the house.
Well, they were selling it for $700,000 at that point, and it was like stuck in 1970. But that thing is easily, if it's been fixed up now, it's easily a $2 million house. There's no way it's not.
Yeah, easily. It was like a huge corner, beautiful lot in like a back of the whatever neighborhood in Winchester. Yeah.
So as I was bouncing around in my early 20s, between jobs, I used to go to this place in Boston that used to give you jobs when we went there, a temp agency. Okay. So they said, okay, we can hook you up with a bank, and you can be a bank teller. And this is right before I got into the hotel, the Omni Park house. I was 23 or 24, whatever it was. I was highly overachieving anyway. So, I forgot what I had been doing. I guess I had been fired from the Marriott, maybe. I don't know, sure. So I have to go to this place in Court Street in Boston and take training to learn how to use the banking system, the CMS, content management system. This is all green screen, though, so this is whatever. So they're teaching us how to fly, to use the system. And then they threw me into the U.S. Trust Bank in Kenmore Square, which was probably a Bank of Boston or Bay Bank or whatever. And but the building is an odd-shaped building in the middle of Kenmore Square that's very rounded. If you guys know, it's like on one peninsula, there's the Pizzeria Uno's, or used to be, and then separating, like Brookline Ave and Beacon Street was the U.S. Trust Bank, which I'm sure now is another bank. But anyway, Kenmore Square, of course, had its heyday, and previous to that, when everybody needed banks. So this bank was kind of cavernous. You walk into the bank and it was cavernous, very high ceilings, and of course it was very cool to work in a bank for a short amount of time. There's a thing that they do when the first two people get there is they walk around the bank and crisscross each other in case they're going to be robbed. It's this kind of thing that's supposed to draw out robbers. And then they go in, and I got my it's the first time I ever seen $1 million, actually, that she showed me. The girl, Ting, her name was, showed me. It was all, of course, not surprisingly, all girls and then Tom Shattuck. And so, but there were female bathrooms and female lockers in dressing room area. That's how busy this bank was at some point. And there was male lockers in dressing room area as well, which was, of course, all mine, because there was no males, and males hadn't worked there. And it was really right of 1955, and there was benches in there, like a normal locker room, and there were showers in there, and there was private bathrooms, etc. And it was amazing, in that old, cold, government feeling brick tile, etc. in there. And in the building, you could go downstairs to the basement of the bank, and there was a door into the Green Line subway. Which was done in 80 years ago as well, in case you needed to get into the Green Line subway. Wow. So that was really cool, because that was essentially all abandoned stuff just to me. But yeah, you wonder, there's places that were once so thriving and busy, that when I was in high school, my mother got me a job on a cruise ship, which was then from the Chandris cruise line, which was a Greek cruise line, and the boat was called the Galileo. It was an old transatlantic boat. So these are the babies that can really. These aren't flat-hulled boats that are just due from Disneyland to the private island in Disneyland. These are real ocean liner boats. So I worked on that, which was an unbelievable thing for 6 or 8 months. I missed part of the school year. I should have just kept working on boats and never gone back to school. I met all sorts. It was just a wonderful. We used to just hang out in the lounge and the casino and a couple of the bars. And much like Titanic, there was because I was a white front of the house person and an American. We were treated. It was all by nationalities. It was crazy. So I ate up with the officers. Me and my mother ate up with the officers, but there was nobody. It was just Americans and Greeks were allowed up there, and then. You could eat in the dining room if you were British, a different dining room, but then everybody else had to eat essentially in the boiler room in hell for the.
Oh, wow!
But I also got to go to the front of the house and drink at all the bars, and it was a very good place to be. So. And to check out all the music all the time when I wasn't working. I was a photographer. So when I wasn't working, which would be long work hours, but what's work when you're on a cruise ship and you're 15 or 16?
And you're taking pictures. I mean, it's not like you're...
Exactly.
Scrubbing toilets or something.
The biggest part... In the guys I worked with, they were all from England. Some of them were just a couple of years older than me, so 18 and 19. They were all much more worldly, because I was an American, or as they called me, a fat American at the time. But they're all worldly, all funny bastards, all fantastic. These guys were so much fun, and it was just a dream come true. And we hung out, of course, in the photog, in the development room, processing room, where you process the pictures with a color processor. You could kill all the lights and start the processor, put the liquid in the thing, and then it was 2 minutes and 15 seconds or something that it took to get stuff to color process to be then cut out. And that was exactly the length of Sound of Silence from Simon & Garfunkel. So they just play that. And it's like, when it's done, it's done. And then they torture each other, and they used to walk at me, like, or to each other, like, with a lit cigarette, because they'd all smoke inside then, and, twist your arm behind your back or something just to torture you. Torture me or the other guys. But it was awesome, because it was horrifying, because all you see was cigarette butts, the cherries, in the dark coming towards you, slowly. Like, Tom, we have something for you, old boy. Have something for you, old boy. Now you can just take your beating, or you can resist, but it's going to be tough either way. And all the British sense of humor. We're getting a beating, but while being charmed by.
Were you already a big Beatles fan by this point?
Oh
too?
Yeah. Well, we talked about the Beatles, and we played A Hard Day's Night, and the guys watched it with me, and they oh yeah. So anyway, so that cruise ship, the Galileo, we knew every part of it, every part of the back of the house. This is why I've seen every single movie that came out in 1987 and some of 88. I've seen them 100 billion times. I used to go into the movie theater and just watch the movies again. And Big was out then, but Tom Hanks, and it was just nonstop. You knew every part of the ship, and there was the crew, the steerage crew bar too, which was fantastic, which was in the back near the engines of the ship, and the beer was warm and crappy, and it was wonderful. But I was 15. I was like, this is the best thing in the world. So, but anyway, the way you bring that up is like all that life and stuff that went on in that ship. Not to mention above the pool with the cruise directors, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the the SS Galileo, and make sure we're going to do our lifeboat stations, and then shuffleboard, and we'll do a little bingo. And they had the same, like, used jokes that they do. All young, good-looking American guys, most of them from radio disc jockeys, would get these gigs. Mm-hmm. So they were all funny. One of them was caught in the elevator having sex, and the elevator opened on the main So
no.
So anyway, I worked with this in the ship in the 80s, and it was wonderful and it was fantastic. And then something right around the time the movie The Titanic came out, which is like 97, right?
I guess. Yeah.
So this is So this is more than 10 years after, whatever. A story comes out that was ridiculous and awful, and I thought this was one of the first times I thought that maybe we needed to be nuked as a civilization, all of us.
Okay.
So a story came out where a fire broke out on a cruise ship off the coast of India somewhere, and the cruise ship was in peril, and so it was beginning the process of sinking at some point. So they had a bunch of people, even though this took days to happen, they had a bunch of people, or maybe 2 days, or maybe a day. So they got everybody off in lifeboats and started to drive the lifeboats towards the shore. This was near shore. Nobody was in really danger. The lifeboats, it was near land, whatever. And the passengers started singing the theme from the Titanic as they're in their lifeboats, not in danger. But oh my goodness, wow, it's just like the Titanic. Let's sing.
Every night in my dreams.
Right. Wherever you are. Exactly. Which is like totally disgustingly self-indulgent, like behavior. We're just like the Titanic people who died. We're also at sea too. Yeah, we're just like Leo and Kate now. Now we're codified for.
That sounds like something that would happen now. Are you
totally it would happen now. Disgusting. So anyway, I every few years after that, I thought about that story and I thought, did that really happen that people went on the sinking ship? And only later, about 10 years ago, I Googled the ship and Googled the name it used to be, and it was the cruise ship I worked on.
It was?
Yes. That was the cruise ship I worked on. So all those lounges and the Lido Deck Bar and all that stuff, these places where so much happened to my life and many people's lives, is at the bottom of the sea now. And it's just, anyway, it just reminds me of my secret Burger King.
It is. But, it reminds me of the show that I started to make you watch with me last night, because I'm like obsessed with this podcast / YouTube show now called The Fall of Civilizations, where they like go through civilizations that have collapsed. And like a bunch of these places were like huge.
That have what?
Collapsed? What's wrong? What?
You're missing a vowel, Alice.
Collapsed?
They have collapsed, correct. They haven't collapsed. That's what happens when people approve in a stadium and they want to make noise for you.
No, they collapsed.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's all these civilizations and they like go through them, and that's like what's crazy about it to me is imagining all these just bustling societies and cities and essentially skyscrapers, even, you know, thousands of years ago, of people living out their whole lives in these big cities and in these big worlds where there are these big, huge economies and people doing differentiated jobs that all are fitting together in this complicated way, and then it just like collapses into dust and is gone. It's like really wild to think about.
And I had no idea. The last night's was about the
Maya, yeah.
And who knew? I always look at that and I think, oh, it's okay, so there's a pyramid surrounded by rainforest. But that whole thing was cleared then.
Right, because they did slash and burn agriculture. So, like, in the 500s, like, thousands of, like, you know, they collapsed, like, 500 years before Columbus even got to that region. So it was, like...
But huge cities.
Yeah,
with streets
huge cities
on grids,
with hundreds of thousands of people, yeah.
And then they disappeared. And then, like, they take a step back for, like, 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And don't regain the technology they had. That's amazing to me. That's amazing.
But it just makes you think about like how tenuous everything is. It's just all hanging by a thread at any given time and could all fall apart. It's really nuts.
Totally.
You know, and this guy does a whole history show where he does it with like dozens of different civilizations. Like it happens to all of them. It's not like some unique special thing that happens. It's like, you know, something that seems to happen relatively frequently in history is that all this stuff gets built up and then it just like falls apart seemingly overnight. You know, there's a war or a plague or a whatever, some kind of economic event, some kind of collapse, a climate event, and everything just goes away. All the stuff that you thought was there, like bam, like it's gone, and all of a sudden you're now like just peasants living in the rainforest again for the next few hundred years.
Jesus,
like,
that's when all the good people are dead, and it's just the Shaddocks, or just the Tom Shaddocks who like don't know how to do anything.
Yeah,
you know, this is fine. We'll just sleep outside.
People are like, didn't there used to be like huge buildings? And you're like, somebody must know how to make those again. And you're like, not me. I don't know.
So, as far as politics goes, we can just brush through this because we're going to play the interview we said we'd play. This is Al in Bloomfield, Connecticut, who's an extraordinary guy, extraordinary caller, and to my radio show yesterday, and I actually listened to it again today, and I'm just thrilled. I could talk to this guy for 8 hours. I think politics-wise, I think that
He should have the show, not you, realistically speaking.
Yes. He's one of many, but yes, I completely agree with you. He would, of course, freaking do a spit take when he saw the salary, but here's my
he probably makes more like on his pension than
yes the interest on his 401k is more. So here's my thing is that the Hutchinson who was
Cassidy Hutchinson
Waspity, I call her Alice because she's a big wasp. She's a lovely wasp, and you know,
I get it.
Good for her. A lot of some of the stuff she said kind of has fallen apart. She claimed that she wrote a note that actually it looks like Trump's lawyer wrote. She got a couple of things wrong. That seems that the limo stuff is wrong, etc.
Well, yeah, and I love how they're being like so the Secret Service is saying they have people willing to testify that the stuff with him lunging for the steering wheel and trying to assault the Secret Service agent is not true. And so then like the cope from the people that have been pushing this stuff.
Cope? What's that?
Like it's like when you're trying to cope with something.
Oh.
So you react anyway. It's like they're saying, you know, so for days they've been making cartoons about and talking about how like Trump he's like a toddler. He's trying to assault the Secret Service agent. He's grabbing the wheel. He's a madman. Can you believe he had the nuclear codes? All this stuff. And then like, so the Secret Service is now saying that none of that happened, but they do affirm that he did want to go to the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, see? So, yeah, some tiny details may have been a little bit off, but the main idea is still there. And you're like, but wait, then why wasn't what you were saying Trump wanted to go to the Capitol? Because that obviously wouldn't be shocking or interesting at all if Trump wanted to go to the Capitol and the Secret Service went, no, I mean, that just wouldn't be a story. So they did what they always do, which is they lead with some shocking allegation and then they walk back 90% of it and pretend that the 10% that's remaining was what they meant all along.
Right. And I think that they're a little stuck here because I don't think Merrick Garland's going to do anything here. So I think that's...
Oh, they're begging. That guy, Mr. presidential Twitter historian, Michael Beschloss, he's lost his mind. He's begging Garland, you must do something. This is treasonous.
Yes, he said it's the biggest thing that we've ever seen in the last century.
Please seek help.
Enough of you people, including relatives of mine, who are just hoping and praying and saying, please, okay, this is it now. Our very foundation here is the smoking gun. If you need a validation based on Trump getting it stuck to him, then just get an effing shrink, okay? Enough, especially people over 50. Please stop it. It's disgusting watching.
Did you see the thing, by the way, that I sent you that, I don't know how to say this guy's name, the young guy, the guy who was the young guy on All in the Family? Rob Reiner?
No, but he is a classic example of who I'm talking about.
So this is what he tweeted today. This morning, this is what he tweeted.
Hold on, before you go, Are there periods in between words?
No.
There should be, probably.
This is where the left is right now. I can't. Okay. My dad died 2 years ago today. I miss him, but he's always with me. And knowing how much he loved a good come-up-and story, he'd be thrilled to see what's happening to Trump. That's how you memorialize your dead dad. Are you sure?
Can't keep Trump out of the obit.
I know. My dad died 2 years ago today. I'm very affected emotionally. And now I'm going to talk about how bad Trump is.
There's no better tribute to your dad than displaying to the world that your dad raised a bitch.
I mean, I don't... Just leave Trump out of talking about the really core human important stuff in your life for 5 seconds. Make one tweet that's just about how your dad died and not about Trump. You don't have to have them both be in the tweet because otherwise you seem like you're a psychotic.
Correct. All right, should we go to my buddy Al in Bloomfield?
Sure, let's talk to Al.
Quick editor's note before we jump to this interview with Al. I had been talking on the show about the Wanda Sykes stuff that we'd played, where she talked about how the elite coast, shouldn't have to listen to the middle of America, and the middle of America was stupid and all that stuff. So he mentioned Wanda a couple times. That's what he's talking about. Enjoy. Let's see. Al in Bloomfield, good day.
Oh, yes, good day. I was really disappointed in Wanda Sykes because she missed the whole point. She forgot about people like me who grew up during a segregationist period, who went to segregation schools and all that, and she can't see the achievement America's made. I'm 70 years old, so she can't see the achievement America made during that time when I was growing up. I had to go to a segregationist school where the segregationist policy existed. She can't see that, and she can't see the amazing thing because she was arguing. She was talking about supporting president. Now,
right.
What you can't understand is that Brown versus education was the president at the time.
Yeah.
Because it was reversed. I was able to go to an integrated school. She can't see that. And then she talked about in effect referring to Walmart shoppers. Black folks shop at Walmarts too. I hate to tell her that, but we do too.
Because Al, it's a class thing. She's an elitist, so she would never shop at Walmart. In her set, they drive really nice cars and they go to exclusive places. But the rest of the country, black, white, Hispanic, and everything else, the rest of us are just trying to survive.
Yeah, it makes no difference. And what she don't see is that when she insults mid-America, she insults Black America at the same time. It's like these attorney financial pimps who only show up when there's a death, and they never stay later to fix the problem, like the attorney you was talking about.
Ben Crump.
Yeah, but that's all I have to say.
Well, you're right about that. Hey, Al, let me ask you a question. So, do you remember being a kid when there was segregation? clearly?
I'll tell you what. I was born in 1952, so obviously,
okay.
I grew up in school systems from elementary school to high school. It was all segregated.
And that includes bathrooms and water fountains. That includes everywhere. And you couldn't go into, I assume, you couldn't just walk into the Woolworths.
Well, I'll put it like this, though. There was a store that's equivalent to Macy's that was in my hometown. That was a water fountain for the white folks. That was a pyramid water fountain. Then off the back of that was a little white bowl that say color.
So the little white bowl was the spill off from the good fountain, and that was for you to drink out of?
And that was for color. They didn't call us black then; they called us colors, and that was it.
God,
people don't recognize. People don't appreciate America because America is constantly evolving. It's changing every day, and if you don't see that, then you don't respect the value of America.
Al, did you feel like when you were just as a kid, just as a young man, did you feel disdain from your fellow citizens, from white citizens? Did you feel that they scoffed at you, and did you feel hate, or was this just the system that was the system?
It was just a system because you knew inherently that there were certain places you can't go. There were certain people you couldn't talk to, and there were certain girls you couldn't date. It was just there, and you knew it because you grew up in that system, and there wasn't fear or anything else. But it was just a system that existed. And that's why I despise these young folks today use the word systemic racism. That was systemic racism, not what we see today.
Oh, Al, you have young girls right now, black, white, whatever, who are angry that their mommy got them the older model of Range Rover, and they consider themselves victims of racism now. They're stealing your experience, Al, and making it their own.
Well, they talking about Range Rovers. We were lucky to have shoes. so I just look at them and I say, you don't know what great society you're growing up in today. And they don't respect it. They don't like it. They want to destroy it. And I find that repugnant. Because this is a great country. It's constantly changing. And life has gotten so much better.
Yes, absolutely. So, Al, then did you go to church growing up?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I grew up in the Deep South, so, we all went to church you didn't even have to ask what you did on Sundays. You already knew.
So was the immorality of racism discussed openly in church, or was that forbidden?
Oh, yeah. It was discussed in church, and, it was discussed so much until the mayor, who was white, he came there to speak about that, to talk about the changes that was being made. The desegregation of the schools that was being made. It wasn't, I grew up in a town that people respected each other. Black or white, they respected each other. And a lot of them was for change. And they wasn't these liberal white folks we see today. They crazy. Like on the Sykes. I mean, it was different. And I love the age I grew up in because I can sit here today at 70 years old and to tell people about the changes that I saw personally in my life. I remember Martin Luther King marching through Montgomery, coming from Birmingham. And guess what? He had to pass through my hometown to get to Montgomery, but he didn't stop because I guess he considered the black people their reactionaries and we wasn't going to do nothing. But when you live through those changes, anybody, white, black, or any color who's 70 years old or over 70, they can talk personally about how that age affected them. And I hate to hear when I hear some of these black people talking about how black people are disadvantaged today and all that. I grew up in a family of 7 kids, and we actually had 2 parents. And out of the 7, they sent 6 of us to college. So don't tell me you disadvantaged today when my parents back then could do that.
How'd they do it, Al? Did you guys work, or did they save, or did they?
My father owned his own business. He owned a painting business and a construction business. The man was phenomenal. He fed his family and took care. And my mother valued 2 things more than anything else: spiritual beliefs and education. And she drilled that into us to say that there's nothing to stop you but you. She always said that was her favorite phrase. There's nothing to stop you but you.
Isn't that such a wonderful and important thing? If you have, in Barack Obama wrote about it in his book, The Audacity of Hope. Barack Obama had the audacity to believe that he could be whatever he wanted to be, which is wonderful.
I'll tell you what, where I grew up at, it wasn't hope. You had to take your future in your hands and your mother and father. Because when I applied to college, nobody told me to apply to college. It was expected of me to do it. To order that college catalog, to fill out that application, to take the SAT and the ACT. It was just expected of me to do it. And when I was growing up, my parents never asked me, or any of my sisters and brothers, did you do your homework? It was just expected of you to do it. That was it.
Wow. We need those values back, Al. My fear is that too many families believe that they've been wronged, that they've been given a bad hand in life, and that the government at some point will come to pull them out of the ditch that they're in. And regardless of race, I just think that having that in mind, that your destiny is not in your own hands, is the recipe for an empty life.
Well, growing up in Alabama, you can expect anything from the government. You never ask for anything from the government because my parents felt that was disrespectful. For you to put your family in that position, you were responsible for yourself, not the government. And now people want people to give them something, and I'm looking at them like, get off your butt and work.
Well, I also assume, Al, that in 1959, if the government came calling to your house, it may not have been good news.
It was never good news. And one thing that my parents, that in the city I grew up in, it was humiliating and embarrassing and demeaning for you to accept. They didn't have food stamps back then, but they have, I think they called it relief. And they would give people relief. And those families was not respected very well in that community. Because if you so lazy, you got to accept relief, then you had a problem. And it was just sad. It's sad to see how things are today where everybody wants the government to give them something. Free stuff.
Oh, yeah. So, Al, were those values that your family had, did your neighbors have the same values? Or were you?
Absolutely. Like, all my neighbors have bought their own houses. We own our own houses. And it's amazing that back in the 40s and 50s, my parents bought their house.
Yeah.
My grandmother, who was a single woman, back in the 50s, late 50s, early 60s, bought her own house as a single woman. Because she worked a full-time job in the cotton mills. Then after that, she owned an acre of land. She used to grow vegetables and sell those and get us out there helping her pick them and do all that stuff. But they were self-sufficient people is what I'm getting at. All these people were self-sufficient.
But that's remarkable. Al, your grandmother was probably maybe 2 generations away from slavery. Maybe.
Well, she was 3.
3. So
she was 3 generations.
So where does these values come? You're ripped out, or somewhere along the line, you get ripped or sold out of Africa, thrown into the United States of America as chattel slaves, as property for labor.
Well, that came from my great-great-grandfather. What he did, he was a slave, and my grandmother used to tell the story all the time. He ran into the swamps of Alabama, got some land, and started building on that land, and growing stuff on that land. Then he started selling the stuff he was growing. That's the independence of generation after generation after generation. But now we have generations that 3 generations on welfare, which makes no sense. To me, that's demeaning, and it's disrespectful to African Americans for these liberal politicians to say that's okay. It's disrespectful.
Also, Al, I don't hear this story enough. You're telling the story of your great-great-grandfather, and it seems to me that he absolutely he embodied the American spirit when we talk about individualism, responsibility.
Well, see, that's what I'm talking about. America's a great country because my grandfather, Will Woodall, can go from being a slave to owning land. Generation later, his granddaughter could buy a house on a single woman could buy a house on her own, which was unheard of. Because what bank gonna lend money to a single woman back then, black or white? And then she could produce kids. Then they could produce kids that they send all their kids to college. So don't make excuses today as far as I'm concerned. Don't say because I'm black, I'm disadvantaged and all that mess. No, you're mentally disadvantaged. That's what it is.
Al, what do you do? Are you retired now?
Well, I'm retired now. I'm old enough to remain. I'm old enough to retire.
70's not old anymore, Al. What did you do?
Well, I worked labor relations with Pratt and Whitney for a number of years. For most of my career, I worked for them in labor relations. After I left them, I went to work for another insurance. I worked for an insurance company, and I did what's called specialty claims with them. Then I went into another company, and I went to another company, and what I did was I lobbied for them at the State House for a while, and then I retired. I got tired of it. Actually, it's time for me to get out of here.
Al, we need you back in the workforce or in academia, for God's sakes, please. Please.
Well, you know, that's funny. I was thinking about it. After I retired, I started getting bored because, you travel a little, then you do this a little. Then you wake up one morning, you do the same routine for 40, 50 years. You take a shower, get dressed, and then you say, where do I go from here? So I've been thinking about that.
Yeah, you got it. It's very tough to retire. My dad did the same thing. As soon as he retired, he joined the loon committee, to go count the loons in ponds, and did 1,000 different things and made new friends from all different political spectrums, this, that, etc. But Al, you have got a story to tell, and it has been an absolute honor talking to you. Actually,
your father and I are not that much different. I got so bored. I volunteer for food shifts. And I wish everybody would volunteer for that thing, because I've met people from all over who volunteer with me, and we're all retired, but But
it's wonderful the people that you meet when you go out and do things for people. It's all sorts of people from all political spectrums come together, and it's really that's what life is about. It's about helping each other. It's not about labels and this party or that party or whatever. God, we're here for a finite amount of time here. We can be decent to each other as we're taking this journey. Al, I would love for you to be a regular caller. I think I've loved this conversation.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your show, because it's a great show, and it points out the difference between people like Wanda Sykes, who don't respect this country, who want to destroy it, and people who want to build it.
Hear, hear. Al, thank you so much. You take care, my friend.
Take care.
You too. That is Al from Bloomfield. Man, what a story. What a life. What an American. What an American story. That guy right there. That is the American story that should be told again and again and again. So what can you say? I mean, I love him. I hope he calls again. And he was just an incredible guy. My goodness, would you not follow that guy into battle?
Sure. It was funny. I said to, so I was listening to this in the car yesterday, driving our daughter home from softball. And she said, she goes, wow. And she goes, he's 70. She said, is that older than Joe Biden? And I said, no. And she said, can he be president instead of Joe Biden? And I said, yeah, that would be a good idea. I mean, he certainly would be better than what's there now. So
he's too good for politics. He just is. I mean, he's somebody maybe in academia, or he should.
But isn't that always the cliche? Is you need the people in politics who are the people who would never get into politics.
Yeah, maybe that's the cliche. I would just talk to the guy forever. I think that somebody should be interviewing him for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Yeah. The Burn Barrel Oral History Project.
Get
on that.
Just such character. My goodness. Just resolve, strength of character.
What's
it called if you're, he's so self-confident and self-assured, and that is a man who is not a psycho.
Yeah, and you know what I think is so important about it, and why somebody should talk to him. I mean, you seriously should do an oral history project with him and anyone else you can find who is like that, because I think what's so compelling about it too is that he has real experiences of this stuff, not academic experiences of it. And it becomes much harder if you really know and understand that history to not realize how much better America has gotten, and not realize that America is not in the throes of systemic racism right now or something, or the most racist time in its history, or whatever it is that leftist Gen Zers think that we're in right now, right? Because you can't say to somebody who really experienced segregation, segregated schools, segregated drinking fountains, who's 3 generations away from slavery, literal slavery in this country, whose, great
whistles
grandfather was literally growing crops in a swamp to build up a livelihood for his family post-slavery. I mean, like, that's, it's so, it's overdone to say, like, kids today don't know. But, like, really, they don't know. They don't know. And they're being purposely sheltered from it, right? The left says they're all about teaching real history and stuff, but they're just doing these, like, woke therapeutic exercises for wealthy white people to assuage their guilt. Mm-hmm. They're not actually talking about first-person accounts of real-life experiences of what these things were like. They're not talking about, because obviously none of what they're calling racism now would hold up under the scrutiny of what real people really went through, a couple of generations ago in this country. And faced with that, how could you not think that America is improving and progressing and getting better, and that we're in a much better place and have much more opportunity than we've ever had in the history of planet Earth? There would be no way that would hold up. Like we talked about before, some law schools talking about how students don't want to read Dred Scott without trigger warnings on it because it seems mean about the way it talks about black people. Like, this is an important decision to read and understand. And it's important for young people to hear the real life stories of people like Al who called into your radio show, because they truly have no concept of how difficult life was for people just a short time ago.
Not only that, but no concept of the other real lived experience of these people whatsoever. So, for instance, you and I were in a text thread at some point when a member of your family, we were talking about like 1967 being a good year, and a member of your family, who we love, texted something like it wasn't good for everybody, it wasn't good for black people, something like that. Okay, that was the point, and
fair.
Well, on the merits, I would say that yes, having to use the dog bowl for your drinking water, that gathers the spittle of the people you consider real humans. Yes, that is not good, among other things. But also, I love that he said that he loved his childhood. He loved the 50s and 60s.
Right.
You never hear... I mean, you think of 50s and 60s, what we're supposed to get in our minds is wall-to-wall German shepherds, attacking black activists in the streets, and Klansmen, and Emmett Till, and this and that. And I'm not saying... Obviously, those horrific things happened. Mm-hmm. But this is a guy who loved his childhood, even through Jim Crow and all the crap that he had to deal with.
Right, but life is complicated, and life was endlessly more difficult for people of all cultures, social classes, and everything else in the past, not long ago in the past either. I mean, relatively recently, life was much, much more difficult for the wealthiest people of 100 years ago than it is for us today. And they still found time to have moments of joy and have a community and have meaning in their lives and find happiness. They didn't mope around taking Wellbutrin and anxiety medications and whatever else, like, because their life had no meaning because there's just so much racism and climate change and whatever else they have a problem with. There's no conception among people that things were really, really difficult and people still like dealt with it and went on with their day and found ways to live life and be human in that time.
And also, I think when you say life was difficult back then, yes, even for, oil magnates, living in beautiful brownstone mansions in New York in 1890 or whatever, it was no less painful for them to watch their children gasp to death with consumption than it is to lose a child now.
Oh my gosh, and they lost so many children back then. I think we read the thing, what was the inscription at the Paul Revere house? He had like 16 children or something, and like 8 of them made it to adulthood. It was like unbelievable, the tragedy and difficulty that people went through just as a matter of course, really not long ago, and still found ways to get up in the morning and do what they needed to do to feed their families and like overthrow the entire British government. Like, it's incredible when you think about it.
So I want to talk. So we're going to go now, okay?
Can I read one tiny passage of something first that is on this topic? Because this is a passage that I always think of when I think of stuff like this. So this is from Anna Karenina, which like Tolstoy's just never misses, right? But this is talking about Dolly in Anna Karenina, who's the jilted wife, right? Who has all the kids and her husband's a cad and he goes and sleeps with the nanny and whatever. And it says, peaceful she could not be. One would fall ill, another might become so, a third would be without something, a fourth would show symptoms of a bad disposition, and so on. Rare indeed were the brief periods of peace. But these cares and anxieties were for Daria the sole happiness possible. Had it not been for them, she would have been left alone to brood over her husband who did not love her. And besides, hard though it was for the mother to bear the dread of illness, the illnesses themselves, the grief of seeing signs of evil propensities in her children, the children themselves were even now repaying her in small joys for her sufferings. Those joys were so small that they passed unnoticed, like gold in the sand, and at bad moments she could see nothing but pain, nothing but sand. But there were good moments, too, when she saw nothing but the joy, nothing but gold.
Wow, that's lovely.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody. You can, as always, shoot us an email.
We'll be doing the chat tomorrow, so load those up, guys, today, the next 24 hours.
Call into the chat. We will do the last chat of the week tomorrow. That's at burnbarrelpodcast.com, and leave a voice message there with the red button. You can also shoot us an email, burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com, and as always, reach out to us on social media, burnbarrelpod on Twitter, and facebook.com/burnbarrelpodcast. Write us a review on Apple Podcasts if you have time. We appreciate it.
C'est la vie.